Hi, welcome to this peerless community interview. I'm here today with Dr. Mansur Hasib. He is a cybersecurity professional and the author of the book Cybersecurity Leadership, which I read, listened to while driving with much pleasure. And Mansur, you are someone who thinks a lot about cybersecurity and how we can do things better, which is what basically your book is trying to convey. Could you go through the main points you make in your book and why you're trying to make these points?
Certainly. Klaus, certainly this is indeed a tremendous pleasure to be talking to you like this. So thank you for doing that, and thank you for listening to the book. The main point that I'm trying to make is that cybersecurity is not about keeping threats from China or foreign countries and so on and so forth. The main premise that I've put in the book is that today enterprise governance, IT governance, and cybersecurity governance is the same thing, and everything blends together. So cybersecurity is the key to innovation in any company. And what I have talked about in the book is that people are the key component of your cybersecurity strategy, because people are what makes the culture of an organization. And the key point is that cybersecurity is not a one-brain sport. You have to engage all the brains of your entire organization for the purposes of cybersecurity. So when you do that, what happens is that every person in your organization is innovating, because every person is using data and technology. So we have to think about cybersecurity and information technology as a revenue and productivity driver. If we think of it in any other way, as an afterthought, overlaying it, done by specialists, it'll never work, because we have to engage the brains of the entire organization. That's why I call it powering the modern organization, because I think it is people that innovate. Technology does not innovate. It is people that even choose what technology to implement and when to change it out, when to configure it, how to configure it, and what technology should interplay with each other. This is all about strategy. The other key point is that companies, many of the companies, about half of at least US companies that I've studied, are right now driving their IT and cybersecurity strategy through their chief financial officer or their chief administrative officer. And that's like a bus driver driving an airplane without a flying license. And so that's disastrous, and that's why we have these disastrous consequences. That happened as a result of this thing about hiring specialists as CEOs who are financial experts. Many of these CEOs don't even understand the mission of the company or the culture of the company. They're coming in 3-4 years, they're supposed to be a financial turnaround expert, and basically all they're doing is managing the budget. Okay, it doesn't take rocket science or a genius to manage the budget. I can manage the budget. If I need to hire an accountant, I can hire an accountant. So in many ways, we can do a financial expert's job, but a financial expert cannot do a cybersecurity leader's job. So I think the age has come that cybersecurity leaders need to be in charge of companies rather than these financial experts. Because the moment you have layoffs and you are ruling with this iron fist and this threatening environment, what are you doing? You're suppressing innovation and loyalty in your organization. You will never have cybersecurity.
All right.
That's the basic premise.
Okay, so let me try to rephrase that to see if I understand you correctly. You are saying that modern organizations should integrate cybersecurity in the same way that organizations have been trying to integrate IT for the last, let's say, 20 years by now, by having the role of IT and the CIO become integrated and aligned with the business mission and strategy and vision.
Absolutely. So if you saw the chapter where I talk about the role of the senior IT executives, the chief information officer and the chief information security officer, I basically talk about 7 specific areas, and it is key. Mission is the key. So in my book, I also provide the cybersecurity model and an academic definition of cybersecurity. And one of the key pillars that the whole model rests on is the mission of the organization, because we have to have focus on what we're doing. And our IT and cybersecurity strategy has to be enhancing the mission, whatever the mission may be, whether it's education, healthcare, finance, it doesn't matter. And then, because of limited resources, we cannot just go after everything in year one or time one. We have to have a multi-year strategy to do something, just like an organizational strategic plan. So the organizational strategic plan, the IT strategic plan, the cybersecurity strategy, this is all the same today, okay? And that is the problem with the organizations, that this is now disjointed. You have financial experts making some kind of business strategy or whatever, and cybersecurity, IT, sometimes is way down in the bottom rungs of the organization. They think that if you buy some technology, it's going to fix the problem. And many of these organizations don't even have high-level IT executives as chief information officers or chief information security officers. As I said, half of healthcare, I did a doctoral study in 2013, and I found that half of US healthcare is driving their IT and cybersecurity strategy using chief financial officers, administrative officers, anything but IT and cybersecurity officers. I mean, that's insane.
Yeah. But that's still, unfortunately, reality that this is happening.
Yeah.
So let's say that I'm working as the chief security officer for a mid or large size enterprise, and my direct superior is, let's just assume that I have the CEO as my direct superior. He reports to a board of directors.
Yeah.
My CEO today, in most cases, will not be tech savvy, as you just said. He will know very little about tech and definitely little to nothing about cybersecurity. He reports to a board of directors that have more or less the same specs, if you will.
Right.
How should I, as a CISO or CSO, how should I approach this educational challenge? Because I can't tell the board to replace themselves and the CEO. How should I do this?
Yes, so this is a very practical challenge. So the first step is you have already fixed one issue with your company. Your hypothetical company already has the CISO or the chief IT cybersecurity strategist reporting directly to the CEO. So I'm assuming now that the CEO also is one of those forward-thinking people who has embraced this as, yes, let's do a partnership. There are many companies that have done that. As a matter of fact, in the city of Boston, the mayor did just that, made the chief information officer as a member of his cabinet. And I talk about that in my book. Kaiser Permanente did that way back when, 1995 or so. Okay, so yes, the CEOs don't have to understand any of this. The key thing is they have to embrace this person as a partner in developing the organizational strategy.
What if they don't do that? What if you just...
If they don't do that, your life will be miserable, you will not be successful, and you will be a scapegoat, and you'll be blamed for every issue. And that's been also happening. If you notice that with all these breaches, basically, who's been losing their jobs? Not the CEOs.
Not a lot, that's true. Except for the notable exception of like Target.
One or two, yeah.
Yeah. So let's say my CEO is not smart enough to realize that I can contribute to the business strategy. Although I'm trying to convince him, I'm failing. How should I do better as a CISO? Because it also falls on me and my communication skills and ability to integrate with the organization.
So yes, what you have to do is translate everything to the mission of the organization and translate every risk in financial terms. So it cannot be some nebulous number. It has to be actual dollars, and you have to have a strategy of mitigating, whether you choose to accept the risk. If you accept the risk, then it has to be transparent. Everybody has to know that this is a risk that the company is accepting consciously, because either investing in that in year one doesn't make any sense. So you have a written trail that the entire chief executive of the organization whoever and the boards have signed off on accepting that risk. That's the key. If you decide on a strategy that this is what I'm going to do year one, year two, because that's the money that we have and that's what makes business sense for us, then once again, they have to be signing off on all those expenses and that, yeah, they go along with it. So then when there is an issue, suddenly you're not the scapegoat. You see, it's a collective collaborative decision.
How
They
do you
have
see
a decision.
how do you see the role of the strategy and the policies for security in reaching that stage of awareness for the CEO and the board of directors?
The policies come much later. The very first thing is that the CEO has to embrace that there are certain values that the companies has to stand by. What are those values? Is ethics and integrity a corporate value? Is the safety of data a corporate value? Is confidentiality of data a corporate value? You have to be able to raise that because you have to build a culture, and I talk about that in the book also. There are 4 elements of culture, right? Values, rituals, and then your heroes, and then the social network. So you have to, as a culture, drive that down from the CEO level and make sure that everybody understands that cybersecurity and the protection of data is not your responsibility as the CIO or the CISO. It is everybody's responsibility because ultimate cybersecurity is determined by the behavior of people.
What if my organization has a chief risk officer? The board of directors, if there is a chief risk officer, will be more accustomed to listening to that guy present both to the CEO but also to the board of directors on risk. Would that person be more fitting to give the risk perspective than the CIO or the CISO?
That's a difficult thing to say who would be. I personally don't think it's a great idea to separate that out. If you have financial risk and cybersecurity and IT risk is a separate thing, and the same person is, because see, the cybersecurity person must also be a business person. So the 2 roles, if they have to be in separate people, then they should again be working collaboratively as a team, which is why I talk about in one of the chapters of the book, I talk about this strategic collaboration that is required within the chief executives, right? Because everybody needs to bring in their different perspectives. So it is possible that, yeah, chief risk officer may only understand the typical financial business risks that their MBA school or whatever school has taught them. So, because we have this problem with education also, because in MBA education, for example, they're not teaching you anything about IT and cybersecurity risks. So that education is not holistic. Same thing with your IT and cybersecurity education. They're not teaching you about business and financial risks or any of that stuff. So you got students coming out of both things, so which may require that period of transition where you have all these various people with these various pieces of knowledge and abilities to collaboratively come together. So that's what I see.
So you don't think it would be an advantage for, let's say, healthcare organizations to have a chief risk officer?
They can, because sometimes these chief risk officers have also legal backgrounds, all kinds of, because see, they're often thinking about risk of litigation, risk of being sued, malpractice in a healthcare organization, all kinds of other risks may come in. So once again, you may need both kinds of people.
Right, because I come from a financial background, and in financial, like a bank, for example, you normally always have the chief risk officer as well as the CIO and the CISO. Mm-hmm. And from what I understand from you is that healthcare organizations rarely have the risk officer.
No, actually they do. Yeah,
okay.
They have risk officers generally. They also have compliance officers. They might have a privacy officer. What I've seen is in many healthcare organizations they actually have more risk officers than they have chief information security officer. So in my survey, I found that 1/3 of the US organizations nationally does not have a chief information security officer in healthcare organizations. And 1/5 of the organizations have no plans to have one anytime soon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because one of my worries is that we're not reaching the CEOs and that they are not being led to understand the financial impact that cybersecurity can have if it's not integrated into the organization properly.
Yes, this is why you probably saw me write those passionate articles where I said, look, we need to probably even fire some CEOs to improve cybersecurity, because I mean, some of these CEOs that do not understand that cybersecurity risk is a business risk, they can't be running these organizations forever. I mean, this is disastrous.
So maybe we should go to conferences for executive recruiters and teach the recruiters how better to recruit CEOs.
I think that's a great idea, or even reach out to CEOs. See, part of the problem is that the CEOs have not been reaching out to us to help them, even though we are here to help them, and yet they don't come to any of these cybersecurity conferences that go around. You won't see them, and if you want to try to talk to them, they say, "Oh, go talk to my technical person or whatever." And I've had discussions over dinner with some CEOs that sat right next to me, and I said, "Oh, do you have a chief information officer?" I said, "Oh, yeah, I have a chief information officer." And I said, "Oh, so the chief information officer is a part of your cabinet?" And the person goes, "No, no, no, I don't want a technical person in my cabinet." So I'm like, wait a minute, this is not a technical person. So many of these CEOs, what they have done is played this Me Too game. They see somebody else having a CIO, so they say, "Oh, I gotta have one too." So what they've done is changed a manager or a director of IT without the empowerment or compensation or anything like that, and just retitle the position. So you got all these CIOs floating around that are not really chiefs, because their strategy is always being overruled by some other person who is sitting in that cabinet.
All right, so using the risk argument of financial impact, we should educate the CEOs. We should even get people to go and find the CEOs, find where the CEOs congregate at CEO conferences, and get accepted to speak and speak to them in a way that they will understand when they are there to listen and to learn.
Yes, well, the key thing is that we need to get them to understand that this is not about just risk, because risk is of two types, positive and negative. The positive means if I invest in this, cybersecurity and information technology is also an investment. This is not just a preventive thing, because that's not the way I think. As I told you, I think of this as an innovation and productivity driver. So they have to embrace information technology and cybersecurity as the key mission driver of their organization, and should see it as a revenue and productivity engine. You see, that's the key. That's the mental transition we need to make.
I'm sure that's one of the places where I've been struggling to understand. So please elaborate. How is it that you say that integrating cybersecurity into the organizational vision and mission will create more innovation?
Well, because cybersecurity is not a state, it's a process, right? You cannot have cybersecurity without continuous innovation.
Mm-hmm.
Simply impossible. And that innovation has to be done by everybody in the whole organization as a culture. Mm-hmm. And so when you embrace innovation as a culture, you're not going to just innovate in one aspect, you're going to innovate in every aspect of your entire company. Look at what happened, for example, to Southwest Airlines. Southwest Airlines is one of those ethical companies that has embraced innovation as a culture, and they are rewarding all their people, all their employees, with the fruits of innovation. So Southwest has a tremendous employee profit sharing plan. Employees are actual owners of the company. Mm-hmm. So the amount of innovation that has been happening happening in that company is just simply amazing. It was a very small little company when it started out in some city in Texas. But now it has become bigger than many of the other airlines combined, and yet it has never had a layoff, and it has never had a losing quarter, including quarter following 9/11.
Right, you said that in your book as well. And
Yeah.
do you believe?
Cybersecurity is another company that is using technology, cybersecurity, all of this as an innovation engine. The amount of investment they have in that and what they've done is driven down their cost, they've driven down their medical errors. The entire US Affordable Care Act, this whole thing about implementing President Obama's healthcare policy, that's all based on the Kaiser Permanente model, which is that we should be paying for quality of healthcare and not quantity of healthcare. Because right now, or in the past, we had this crazy system where a doctor would purposefully order 100 tests because that means payments for lots and lots of people, including sometimes kickbacks from various people, and because of a referral, okay? And all that needs to disappear because I need to pay more for a doctor who can heal me rather than who can order 100 tests. That's crazy.
Right. So actually what I'm hearing is that, and I go to a lot of conferences, both for CIOs and for IT and infrastructure and for security. As a former CIO and CISO in a bank, I did a lot of this, and I've seen people present on the need to foster a culture of innovation in your company. And you're saying that the culture of cybersecurity, integrating that into your company, will also help foster the culture of innovation in your company.
It's the one and the same. Yeah.
That's great. That's great. That's a great point. I really like that.
It's one and the same. That's what I've done, you see, because what happens is that the embrace of technology. So when I used to teach people, I never taught them about cybersecurity or whatever. I taught them specific to their job functions. So if it was a nurse, I'd find out, what technology do you use as a nurse? What data do you handle as a nurse? What is important to you? And do you work at home? Do you work, where do you work? They already have training for that nurse. They have periodic continuous education for that nurse also. So dovetail any other technology related training and call it productivity training rather than cybersecurity awareness training. See, cybersecurity awareness training does not work because you try to overlay that, people's eyes glaze over. It doesn't mean anything to anybody. When you teach nurses according to their job function, now they will embrace it because they are becoming better at their jobs. It was so amazing. When I was at the Baltimore City Health Department, one of the funniest things I found out that it's a over 100-year-old organization, and there's been plenty of IT leaders before me, yet nobody had taught any of these people how to be very productive. Even simple productivity tools like Excel, Word, some of these productivity tools, nobody provided any training because IT was primarily viewing their job as control, okay? Not as an enabler of technology and productivity. See, I never viewed my role as a control issue. My thing was, because I know the power of technology is not in the technology itself, it is how people can use that technology to be better and innovative. So once I started training them on all of that stuff, wow, I mean, they were like, oh my God, so I can do this in Word, I can do this in Excel, I can do this, and oh yeah, I do use thumb drives. Oh, I can encrypt it like this. Wow, this is fantastic. Oh, my whole laptop can be encrypted. This is fantastic. So teaching them, instead of me doing all the work for them and driving up my own support costs, why don't we teach them? Because none of us are really doing programming anymore. Programming is already being done. We're mostly using custom off-the-shelf software and all that stuff. So anything that I can learn, anybody else can learn.
Right. A final question. I don't know if you've been following the Stock in Traffic vlog by Wolfgang Görlich on Peerlist.
No, I haven't been doing that.
You should give it a chance. He's driving in his car and he has a dash cam, and while stuck in traffic, he records these little 3 to 5 minute small episodes. In
Okay.
one of the recent episodes, he said that to do cybersecurity better,
Uh-huh.
you need three frameworks. You need a framework for controls,
Uh-huh.
a framework for processes, and a framework for culture.
Okay.
What do you think of that?
I think that cybersecurity, in my book also I talk about the cybersecurity model. So cybersecurity model has three tools at our disposal. The first tool is people. And people doesn't mean controlling them. It means engaging them and embracing them and using them and empowering them and setting them free to use technology. The second pillar is this whole policy and process. And policy cannot be all negative. So one of the mistakes that companies make is make every policy punitive. If you do this, we're going to fire you or we're going to penalize you or whatever. Instead, if you want to really build culture, you have to give people rewards, incentives. So why not have an intranet with a wall of fame with all the best ideas, or whoever improved productivity, found out an unsafe way data was being handled and pointed it out and you fixed it. This is happening in every company. Data are being handled the wrong way, but nobody is pointing that out because really they haven't been engaged or incentivized to do so. So that's the second pillar. And the third pillar, the final pillar, is technology. Instead, companies have been doing the reverse. So frameworks, I don't know, people have various opinions, but this academic model that I'm talking about has been building since 1991. So the first model for information security was done by John McCumber in 1991. At that point, he did not stress people as much. What he talked about was training and awareness. So a lot of companies are still doing that 1991 training and awareness. In 2001, there were four scholars, McConaughey, Shue, Ragsdale, and Welch. They developed the information assurance model in 2001, which actually became the model used for academic information assurance education in the United States since 2005, 2006.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And then what that model did was introduce the concept of time, that you have to have continuous innovation and improvement because cybersecurity is not a state, it's a process. And then said cybersecurity awareness training is not sufficient because you need to engage the people, because ultimate cybersecurity is determined by the behavior of people, not anything else. And people are the critical part. They said technology and policy process are important, but far less than the people component. So that's what I also embraced. And the only thing I added to the model was that, well, that was 2001. 2014, we recognized that we have limited resources, so you need to have the mission focus, you need to have a risk management strategy, and you need to have this whole governance and leadership. In other words, it really has to be through empowerment of people rather than control of people. So that's the basic model of cybersecurity that I believe in, and my own academic model is based upon that entire model, embracing that entire model. Because if I'm going to teach cybersecurity to somebody, I cannot just teach them about cybersecurity engineering or cybersecurity computer science. So you will see that a lot of schools, because cybersecurity is a sexy word and it sells, they might have an engineering school, but they now have a degree program in cybersecurity. But in reality, it's a degree program in cybersecurity engineering, the technology aspect, a very small sliver. If you ask them what model you're following for this education that you're delivering, they will probably have no answer. But you see, you cannot do that. You have to have a model. If you're going to teach cybersecurity, what is the model that you're basing your entire cybersecurity education on? See, the program that I've developed, the Master of Science and Doctor of Science program in Business Information Technology and Cybersecurity, which is a holistic degree program, is based on that entire model. And we teach the entire model in that program, not engineering or just computer science. You will see a lot of computer science schools. So a lot of the cybersecurity programs are run out of the Department of Computer Science. That might be okay if you're still embracing the whole model. But a lot of these people are not embracing the whole model. Some are being run out of business schools. Now, some of the business schools have done a better job at this because they begin to get it. So I've done external reviews for some of these schools that are running their cybersecurity programs out of the business schools, and I saw that their approach was a little bit more business-oriented, leadership-oriented, people-oriented, and they were stressing the people policy side a lot more, and that's the way we need to teach cybersecurity.
Right. I think we should wrap up with that because I think we have discussed a lot of things that will help anyone who is in a CIO or a CISO role or aspiring to take such or studying in one of these, what would you call that in English? Directions? Is it a study direction? Or
Sure.
So, Mansur, thank you very much. That was great, and I hope to talk to you again soon.
Thank you, Klaus.
In a follow-up to this, maybe more in depth into one of the pillars.
Sure, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.